What's up, everybody, and welcome to the 11th episode of Stags in the Studio of the 2024-2025 academic school year. My name is Logan Rundy, your assistant sports director here at WVOF. Across the table is Brendan Boudelier, one of our sophomore sports broadcasters. Today, you get two for the price of one with two additional Stags women's basketball coaches. We'll start with our first guest, Coach Erik Johnson. Coach is in his third year with the Stags, 26th overall coaching season. He was the head coach at Boston College for 6 years, and prior to that was the head coach at Denver for 4. He helped the Eagles to a Sweet 16 appearance in 2006, and then after BC, he went to work with the Positive Coaching Alliance, which is a program that assists young athletes and coaches with the tools to be successful both on and off their playing surface. Coach Erik Johnson, welcome to our studio.
Glad to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and definitely not to be secondary. Coach Blake DuDonis, as many know, married to Coach Carly DuDonis, and it is in his third season on the Stag staff. 3 years as the coach of the University of Wisconsin River Falls, and created his own position in the Roadrunner. The Roadrunner term, to quote, designates the speed, length, and athleticism of the team's post players. Huge progression in offensive statistics during his tenure as head coach, and spent time as an assistant at the University of Buffalo. He started his career at Merrimack during the 2011-2012 campaign and was once a regional scout for the Washington Mystics, the WNBA squad. Coach Blake DuDonis, welcome to our studio.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate doing the full gambit of the staff, and I know me and Coach Erik are both very excited to be here.
You know, fun fact for everybody listening, Coach Blake might be the first person to ask for one of these episodes after he saw Coach Carly's episode, so it's definitely a pleasure to have both with us this morning. I kind of want to just ask you both. You obviously have had long careers in other places. I'll start with you, Coach Erik. How did you end up at Fairfield, and what was it like to kind of step on campus for the first time?
Well, so my story is a little bit interesting, right? So I was an assistant coach for 14 years, kind of climbed the ladder, really wanted to be a head coach, got to be a head coach at the University of Denver, went to Boston College as a head coach. And when I left BC, I had 2 kids in high school. And I didn't want to move the family around. This is a crazy world, Division I, sports. And again, I went from San Diego to Rhode Island to San Diego to Boston to Denver, back to Boston, right? And again, with 2 kids in high school, I was like, okay, we're not doing that. So I got out, and as you mentioned, I did work with Positive Coaching Alliance. I was coaching and recruiting in financial services. I was the volunteer assistant at my daughter's high school. I was the head AAU coach. So I kept myself in the game, but I was able to kind of take myself out of the crazy, rat race of this business, right? Then I got a call one day. I was actually with my daughter at Madison Square Garden watching the Knicks. I had just done a Positive Coaching Alliance workshop with the junior Knicks, and it was Carly Thibault, who I know okay from like the, just being around sports. We know a lot of the same people, being around women's basketball and everything, but we didn't have a close relationship. But again, coaching people call me all the time about random stuff. So I was like, Carly, hey, I'm at this game. I can't even hear you, whatever. And she's like, all right, well, can we talk in the morning? I'm like, yeah, sure. So anyway, that call was, she basically knew she was getting the Fairfield job and wanted to talk to me about, coming as an assistant coach. And again, at the time, that was going to upend my life in a major, major way. So Blake got on the phone, the next day as well, did a little recruiting, and I did come on campus. And look, I say it all the time, it would have taken a perfect situation to get me to come back into this nutty business, right? And if that gives you any indication about how strong I feel about Carly, Blake, this place. So again, it's an unbelievable situation. And, my wife and I were becoming empty nesters. We downsized, moved to the beach, started hanging out with these cool young kids, and got back into the game and been having a blast.
All right, Blake, the known question, how did Coach Carly drag you to Fairfield?
Carly and I met about 12 years ago. I was an assistant at Buffalo, as you mentioned. She was an assistant at Eastern Michigan, the other MAC. And so we met at a recruiting event. We happened to sit at the same court. We knew we were both new to the league. So that's how we met. So fast forward, 7 years, we're getting engaged and married. And when we moved to Minnesota, when she was the associate head there and I was the head coach at River Falls, it was something we talked about of, if an opportunity ever arose to work together, that'd be really cool. But it wasn't something that we were like, we're going to go pursue. This is going to happen. We loved Minnesota. We loved living there. She loved working at the U for Lindsay Whalen. I loved my head coaching job at River Falls. I loved working at River Falls. So kind of like Erik just said, like it was going to take a perfect situation. And so, jobs come up over the years, and everyone, it was like, it didn't feel right. She wasn't interested. But when Fairfield called and she had a conversation with Paul Schlickman and Zach Dayton, and she came to me and said, I'm intrigued. I said, whoa, that's new. Haven't heard that one yet. So I started looking into the school, and then they flew us both out for kind of the final interview. And we both, so I still remember we got in the car to drive back to LaGuardia, and we were going down North Benson, and we kind of looked at each other. We're like, what are we talking about? This place is unbelievable. So it was a no-brainer for us. And it's funny because with Erik, I guess I still have, it's not as active, but I had a women's basketball podcast, and I had Erik on, and this was after he had left BC. And so we got to know each other a little bit on that podcast. So it was funny because when Carly got the job, she said something that she was like, how old is Erik Johnson's youngest daughter? And I was like, I think she's graduating high school. And so they're going to be empty nesters. I was like, yeah. So we might be able to get them. I mean, maybe. And so it's funny because that's how that started. And then she called him, and he was at MSG, and here we are 3 years later. So funny full circle.
What a crazy story.
So, Coach Blake, what's it like? You got the game here at home. Are you and Coach Carly talking game behind closed doors?
Yes. Yeah. People ask about the separation. There's not a separation. Like it's not. But what we are intentional about, and we have been, and it's something we talked about from the get-go, because obviously with Erik and Coach E, too, an interesting dynamic working with a married couple. One thing we committed to and we've been consistent with is, we never go home, talk about stuff, and make decisions. Right? And if the conversation ever gets to a point where it's starting to reach decision zone, we either table it, or if it's really, really important time-wise, we call these two, we FaceTime them in, hey, this just came up, we need to make a decision now, what do we all think? So it's never a situation of me and Carly, and in fact, and I think Erik can attest to this, me and Carly usually are on opposite ends of the spectrum on topics. Like, we argue and disagree a lot. And that's what's good, and that's what's healthy, and it's a healthy environment where our whole staff can disagree with each other. But when a decision is made with Carly, we're in, right? Because we know that she's done it with all the information gathered with her. So, yeah, so we do talk stuff out, but we save the important stuff for the office, for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, just kind of, I've seen the group mesh over the 2 years I've been here, and it's been a really beautiful thing to see. And I want to see both your perspectives on my next question. I'll start with you, Coach Erik. So let's say you call a timeout. A hypothetical situation, and all you guys gather away from the team. Is there a method behind that, and what is your perspective, and what is your role in those timeouts, and really on the team to make sure this team is successful in different ways?
Yeah, so timeouts, interesting question. Everybody wants to know what happens in those huddles, right? So, really I want to give the team just a few seconds to kind of take a deep breath, right, and kind of get themselves organized. And we want to make sure that we have the most directed message, right? So Carly uses us for input, right? And so, one of us is generally on the scout, right? So one of us has an in-depth knowledge of, what are they going to run? What kind, what adjustments might they make? Those kinds of things. My role is often on what things can we do to exploit their weaknesses defensively, right? So what might we be able to run, those kinds of things. But again, we're all basketball people. So it's not like football where there's like, okay, Blake coaches the linebackers, I'm the defensive coordinator. There's so much overlap in the game of basketball that we all have different, perspectives. Like Coach E is often thinking defense. She's kind of our defensive guru, but she also coaches the point guards, right? So it's like she's also, thinking about, that side of it. Blake coaches the road runners. I know you've talked about that. We'll probably dive back into road runners before this thing gets done. But again, he's been a head coach, right? So we've all got lots of basketball knowledge. So really, we're trying to help Carly, and she's using our input of like, hey, and she even writes some notes on her board of like, okay, let's talk about this, let's talk about this, let's talk about this. And she has to prioritize then, right? Because there's times where like, I'll be saying something, she'll be like, I know, we've talked about that 14 times, like I don't think we're getting any farther with that one, and as Blake said, she's the one that then has to kind of assimilate all the information that we're feeding her and decide what's most important to talk to the team, and then how do I want to deliver it.
Blake, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And I think for us, we try to give Carly bite-sized information, right? Because those media timeouts are 2 minutes and 30 seconds, right? So we're probably over there for 30 to 45 seconds. So if me, Erik, and Erik are all, blah, Carly's going to be like, well, this does not help me, right? So we try to stay pertinent. Usually one of us there's kind of a feel of like, there is this thing, because we're talking to each other too on the sideline as the game's going, right? Carly's up coaching, and Erik's looking at me and like, hey, man, like, so-and-so's not setting really good balls. I'm like, yeah, you're right. We need to talk about that, right? So we've kind of already chunked it down. So being able to give her like, hey, here's 2 or 3 things that we're seeing and we're talking about, and here's how we can fix it. And she's able to digest it and then figure out the right tone too. Because there's times, right, where you just need to see, hey, guys, settle down, right? And there's other times where she needs to turn the flame up of, guys, let's go, right? And it was usually a little firmer language than that. But but being able to get the right message and the right tone, but giving her enough time to do all those things.
So you've mentioned it now, Coach Erik, you've mentioned it, Logan brought it up, this term roadrunner. I mean, you come up with this term for a new position. How did that all start, and how is that different from just a power forward position, the big man position, stretch 3, stretch 4? Like, where does it all differ, and how did you originally come up with that?
It's taken on a life of its own, for sure. So after year 1, Carly had said to me, like, I feel like our posts need an identity. Just something that they can latch on to, something we can reference, and it wasn't necessarily, it didn't need to be this extreme, but it was just something to, just because we wanted to play 5 out. We wanted our players to be able to dribble, pass, shoot, everybody. And so something to kind of just, direct that. And so I thought about it for a while, and the Roadrunner thing kind of just, it was random. Like I don't even remember if I saw a clip or something, but I saw the Roadrunner, and I thought about it, and I was like, Roadrunner, I mean, he's fast, he's persistent, right? Wile E. Coyote's been trying to blow him up for forever, and he's always avoiding it, and he's really agile. And so I throw the idea out to Carly, and she kind of laughed, and she's, I kind of like it. Like, it's silly, but it's good. So I tell the team about it, and they kind of look at me like, okay, what? I don't get it. Like, what? Who's the Roadrunner? What's the Roadrunner? I'm like, like the cartoon, like the Looney Tune, and it was just blank stares. So I was like, all right, great. So now I feel old, right? They don't know who the Roadrunner is, and so
I do.
Thank you. I appreciate that
as well.
Thank you. I feel like that's a cultural reference, but so we pulled up film, and so we watched Wile E. Coyote try to get the Roadrunner, and we're seeing them running around going meep meep, and so they're cracking up, and that was the point where I was like, okay, we're good, right? Because if they think it's cheesy or stupid, then it doesn't work. Right, so for them to embrace it, and again, it is a little cheesy and stupid, but it's our cheesy, stupid thing. And so they cracked up, and they're like, we're all in. And so we started doing it, and so we would be in practice meetings, and Carly would be like, all right, so we're going to split up. So the guards are going to go down there, the posts are going to go down there, and I'd be like, Roadrunners. And she's like, right, the Roadrunners are going to go down there, and then later on. So make sure the posts, Roadrunners. And I just kept interjecting, Roadrunners. And then Carly got to a point where she's like, it's too wordy. I can't say the Roadrunners need a rim run and this and that. We got to shorten it. And I go, meep. So we call them meeps. And if you come to our practices or you watch us after we do breakdowns right before in warm-ups and games, we break it down. Meeps on 3, 1, 2, 3, meeps. And so it's become a whole thing to where we call them meeps. We say meep to each other all the time. Every time I see Cy when she walks in the office, meep, Coach Blake. Meep, Cy. So it's taken on a life of its own for sure.
We have a post-entry drill literally called Find Your Meep.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty funny. So you have 6 of them on the roster, 5 of which are eligible this year. And what I think is great is all of them can hit the 3 at some point. What is your kind of message now that we have it designated and we understand what it is? What is their role in kind of the offense and really on the defensive side of the ball too?
Yeah, defensively, we do a lot of switching on ball, and so because it just kind of takes away any confusion or ambiguity. So it's nice that we've got these players that are mobile enough that they're 5'11" to 6'2" and can switch onto these small guards and use their athleticism to keep them in front. So it's a big deal for us because a lot of people were like, well, you switch Katie Lamb, for instance, who's 5'6" onto a big post player. That's really scary. And it's like, well, we know there's a mismatch too, and that point guard now has to throw it over a 6-foot meep with their hands up in the air. It's pretty hard to do, and that's like people always say, well, what about the mismatch? Like, well, we know there's a mismatch too. We're aware, and we're able to kind of handle like that. And then offensively, every summer we go on a staff retreat, and we all have different projects that we're in charge of. And something that Erik and Carly looked at after year one was really successful mid-major teams have post or forwards that can shoot, that can step on the perimeter, that can dribble. And it was very clear, like, this is the path. This is the way forward. And so having people that can shoot. And look, some people shoot it better than others, right? Like, Sai's not a great three-point shooter. She's made a couple this year, but she's still super athletic, so she can dive in from the perimeter, and there's just so much more space. So we talk about, like, if you can't shoot, there's still a spot for you, but you still need to be elite at something else. So having her elite athleticism, or Ray is really starting to shoot the ball more lately, but she also just walks down and just runs you over. I'm like, that's an elite skill too. So it definitely leaves a little flexibility in there of, like, you don't have to be able to shoot, but if you can, and you can post up and you can dribble, we feel like this system's a really successful one.
Yeah, and I would just add that, like, the branding of how fast we play. Like, everybody says they want to play fast. Like, find me a coach that tells a recruit, oh, well, we actually play slow, right? They all say we play fast, right? But when you watch them play, you're like, no, you don't, right? And players all say they want to play fast until they realize how much conditioning goes into actually sprinting and being in great shape all the time, right? It's a lot of work, right? So the Roadrunner thing is a way of also just, again, attracting the right people, getting them in the right mindset, and having an identity that, no, we're going to fly down the court every single time, and we're going to go. And that's, Blake and I have actually had a ton of fun with the media folks at other places where we go. Some of them really get into it. They're like, they'll come over, guys, what's a Roadrunner? How do we do, and they'll announce it. The first one that I remember was at Indiana in the NCAA tournament in front of 17,000 fans. Starting at Roadrunner number 5, Megan Anderson, right? And they got into it and they loved it. Other ones won't do it, hate it. They're like, we'll say that the position Roadrunner, oh, we don't do that. Sorry. We'll have forwards and we'll have guards. And, Coach Blake, of course, gets his Roadrunners fired up. Oh, okay, guys. All right, yeah, they don't want to call us Roadrunner. Okay, that's fine. We'll have to give them a little something in the game or whatever. So it gets pretty fun.
That's great. You mentioned going to Indiana last year, switching gears a little bit to that historic season last year. Coach Erik, you've been to the NCAA tournament before when you were on the staff at BC 2006, making it to the Sweet 16. What is it like having that experience going there and then coming here to Fairfield and being able to make it to the NCAA tournament and taking those girls there, but just having that experience already with you?
Yeah, look, it's special. Going to the dance it's really hard. I've been in the game a long time, and each time that I've been able to go, it's been a little bit different. And 1996 at URI was my first trip, and we weren't the last team in, but we were literally the last team to come up on the selection show. So I had seniors crying, thinking we were out, whatever. And that, in the last game, it was I forget what seed, it's a 6-11, something like that, whatever. And, the University of Rhode Island place goes nuts, whatever, we get to go. At the University of San Diego, we were a 500 team who ran the table in the conference tournament, right? So, we'd had an okay season, and boom, we win 3 games, and suddenly we're like, oh my goodness, we're going to Notre Dame to play on St. Patrick's Day against them in their green uniforms with, the BC team was an interesting one, right? It was, the ACC in that year ended up having 3 Final Four teams, and there was 7 top 25 teams. So we were 6-8 in conference the year we went to the Sweet 16, right? And then I've coached my whole life. I never even thought about winning 29 games in a row. That's just not a thing people do unless you're named Don Staley or Gino or whatever, right? And Blake and I had this conversation the very first game of the season. We were, I remember sitting at
Lipscomb?
At Lipscomb, yeah, Nashville, right? We go to Nashville to play Lipscomb and Vandy, and we're like, this is a pretty good team that we're playing, and hey, these are the games we got to be able to win these games on the road. If we want to get to where we want to get, this is a good litmus test. And we came out and banged like 3 threes right off the bat, Megan Anderson, this whole thing. Maybe we got a pretty good team, right? So it was one of those years where we just kind of kept going, and suddenly we had this ridiculous winning streak, and then the pressure was on us in the conference tournament. I've never been an undefeated, so I've been coaching my whole life. I've never experienced anything like that. So everyone's different. It's all incredible, and it's all special.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a special time. That season was special, and that's, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But, turning the page to this year, we're almost to that postseason once again, about 3 weeks away, 4 weeks. But I want to turn the page a little bit to more of the background of basketball games and just kind of talk to me, kind of both of your perspectives on how the administration allows you guys to make an impact off the court as well. I'll start with you, Coach Blake.
Yeah, it's something that was important to Carly and myself when we took the job of using our platform for good. We've seen, obviously, women's basketball has blown up across the country. People care, people watch, people are listening. And so we've seen so many people use those platforms for good. So coming to a place that would allow us to talk about stuff that maybe some people would like to avoid is really important. And so for us to be able to highlight people is meaningful to us because, you look at our team, it's all sorts of colors and people and backgrounds and identities and whatever else. And so, we've got a really diverse group of, 15 young people. And so for them to be able to go out and, us be able to say, hey, you matter, you're important, and people like you are important, it means a lot to us. And Erik's, he talks about it all the time with recruits, and he's so right, but like having an administration where the alignment is set up, it's not like that in a lot of places. And so for us to be able to have kind of top to the bottom support across campus, and I think that's been cool too, because as we've gone on each year, I think people on campus who are in these spaces every day are looking at us going, oh, okay, these people are actually about this. This isn't just okay, we did this game, check. It's like, oh no, they keep showing up and we keep trying to do more and we keep trying to advance it more. And so that's been really encouraging to have people across campus, kind of backing us up.
Yeah, amen. It was one of the first things I asked Carly when we were talking in the interview process was like, what's Fairfield really like? What's the culture there, right? Are we going to be able to talk about some of the things? Because look, I've been at different places where not every topic is really welcome to be talked about, right? As Blake said, and that's frustrating for a coach who coaches a lot of players who are in marginalized groups, and to be able to amplify their voices, to be able to tell their stories and support them and show publicly, and also bring in other people from those, marginalized groups, and be able to, as Coach Blake said, hey, you matter and you're loved and we care about you, right? These kinds of things. That was important to me. We were talking before even the podcast started, before you walked in, Blake, that Blake has been a very, very vocal social media member for a long, long time about not just basketball and issues around our game, also social issues, right? And somebody that even before I knew Blake very well, I followed. He's been a role model for me on the media side and how to be able to talk about things in a positive, productive manner, right? And the use of social media for good, to be able to talk about the right things and bring good topics out there and amplify voices, those kinds of things. So again, it's been really fun working with Blake, and also again, Coach Carly believes in this, so deeply, and she does it, I think, an incredible job of not. She's clearly the face of the program. She's this incredible force of nature, and yet she does not want to take the spotlight. She wants to be able to amplify other voices and be able to help others. She's incredibly humble, and that stuff is, again, it's inspiring to me.
Yeah, I think you make a great point of, social media as a positive thing. For example, we may not be having this conversation if Coach Blake didn't reach out to us and use social media for a good reason. And you mentioned Coach Carly, and I think before opening night this year, she was in our dining facility giving out tickets and really just promoting the game. And I think you guys do a great job of not only promoting the game, but really highlighting the fact that it's more important than basketball. Obviously, you guys, your job is to win basketball games, but at the end of the day, what people are going to remember, especially, on Kids Day, for example, their experience at the game, who they got to meet, taking pictures, signatures, all that. So I think that's a great thing that you guys do, and I think it should be implemented more around the country.
Well, and look, you'll also find that the people who are most successful have a mission, and they're not just about winning. Nobody wants to win more than Carly, right? But winning is not the most important thing to Carly. Right. The most important thing to Carly is how you treat people, how you make the world a better place, how you help these young women become great people in the world. And oh, by the way, when you create a team with great character who does all these things and cares about the right things, winning happens too. Right. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, it's such a good point. Getting the connection and outside of the game down to get the connection inside of the game. Right. On that a little more. How important is it for the outside of the game, the academic standpoint for your girls? How much emphasis do you guys put on that to make sure that they're in the classroom, getting their studies done and doing well?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of credit goes to E and Alex on this one. E's basically created this tracker that every week the girls fill out and plug in what they did that week, any grades they got, whatever else. And really, it's just to help them stay organized, right, and stay on point. The beauty of being somewhere at Fairfield is it eliminates a large population of recruits, because if you're not academically driven, like, you're going to struggle here, right? You guys know this, right? Like, you will not be successful here. So we're able to kind of go, yeah, okay, we're good, and we can cut that off there. And we found if you're driven academically, you're usually driven athletically and other ways too. And so it kind of helps us. It's a beautiful thing being in a school like this with such high academic that we can kind of process and filter people out that way. But yeah, we're big on it. We don't miss classes. We have been known to roam a hall before class. Class starts at 9. You might see one of us walking around the math building or the communications building at 8:50, just, making sure. And again, we've got a group of great young women that have been pretty great about all that kind of stuff. But we're not just here for basketball, right? If you have a 20-year basketball career after you leave Fairfield, you're still 41 years old, and you got a life ahead of you. So, it's not lost on us that it matters.
And Carly always says, how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So, again, don't tell me, oh, I work really hard in basketball, but, academically, that's not how it works, right? How you do anything is how you do everything. And she really, makes sure that we stand by that on the academic side. And then I think the other thing that's interesting with any group of people, right? So we've got 15 young women, and look, their academic abilities are extremely varied, right? You've got some that are incredibly driven and incredibly talented, on the academic side. I mean, Amina had the highest GPA of any graduate last year, right? In the entire university. And we've got other ones that struggle, right? That it's really hard. Right, and doing what we do, and they need more support. Maybe they didn't have as much of an academic background coming in and things like that. So I think, again, and I'm glad you gave credit to Coach E. She has really worked with some of the players that maybe have struggled a little bit more, and just, hey, you are going to be in my office. We are going to be doing study hall. There is no way that we're going to allow you to fail. And we've had several players that maybe without that kind of support. And again, big shout out to Coach E for just going above and beyond and spending the hours and hours that it takes to be able to help someone and just say, you're not going to fail. They have to do it for themselves. We can't do it for them, but to tell them, we believe in you and we're not taking anything less than you making it. So this stuff's big.
Yeah, you make a great point of, you care more about the person more than what happens on the basketball floor. And I think that's super impactful because you only get 4 to 5 years, sometimes 6 in some cases. And so to make that personable impact is way more important than really on the basketball floor. You guys are able to balance both. I've seen that. And especially on the education point, Katie was in here in November, and I think you had just gotten back recently from the South Carolina swing. And she was like, oh, we got back on the bus at, 12:20. I went to class at 12:30 the next day, or the same day, I should say. And so that's definitely, you guys are absolutely right. And you mentioned how Brendan and I have seen this academic and the rigor, and it's challenging here. And one of the things I would tell recruits is it's challenging, but people want you to be successful. It's not competitive with other people. It's competitive within yourself, right? Everybody wants to be successful. And this university does a great job of making sure that happens. And it starts with you guys and really pushing athletes. I want to get into more of the administrative side of things because I think it's vital to our success here. I'll start with you, Coach Erik. How is President Mark Nemec? He's very in-depth into sports. He's courtside at almost every game. And I'd argue he's almost as loud as Coach Carly on the sides, but that's hard to beat. Just kind of tell me what the support from the president of your university is and just being able to have that behind you when you're playing and competing.
So you heard Blake allude to it earlier, and I tell recruits this all the time because this is the stuff you don't see, and you don't even necessarily know how important it is until you become a head coach. But the alignment from the head coach to the AD, to the board of trustees, to the president is absolutely pivotal to being successful. And people don't understand how difficult it is. They're like, oh, this coach is at a good school and they have a good budget and, they're on TV and stuff like that. If you don't have that kind of alignment, things are really, really sticky. And when I came on my first kind of, visit to campus and interview, one of the things I told Coach Carly was I was like, look, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off in my life or not, but you are in an unbelievable situation because Paul Schlickman came and walked us around campus and just the alignment there. And then him talking about signing a 5-year extension and how much he believed in President Nemec and just that stuff is, like I said, it's huge. So President Nemec, we talk about all the time, right? So he is tougher on the officials than the coaching staff, no question, for sure. Right? And Blake can tell you some stories about that. We also got to play in a faculty staff versus students basketball game with him. where, he's an ex-rugby player. Am I getting that right?
Yep.
Yeah, rugby player, right? And so rebounds like crazy, defense. He still hustles like crazy. He's diving on the floor. He dove on the floor to go get a ball and took out a student's legs on the way. Not intentionally, whatever, but as like bodies are flying, or he's just grabbing boards and going, Blake, come and get it. He can hand it to Coach, because he doesn't want to dribble and shoot as much or whatever. But his competitiveness and just passion for what we do is awesome. And so being at a place that gets how important what we do is and understands that we're furthering the mission of the university as well, and that it all fits together. It's not just basketball. It's honestly, it's the reason I'm here. Right? Is that alignment and being in a place that we can believe in. It's probably a big reason that Carly and Blake came here in the first place anyway.
Yeah. And I think even if you look back at when Mahoney opened, right, like this brand new $50+ million facility, there are a lot of places in the country that would have said, so our men are going to be opening this arena. The first game in here will be a men's game, or it'll be a doubleheader, right? But when we were doing scheduling, we were like, hey, we've got an opportunity to play on this day. Like, are we good? And they were like, yeah, that's great. Of course. Like, it wasn't even a question. And so even something as simple as that, where it might seem trivial, it's not trivial. Like, there's a lot of people like, no. We're going to, first time people are walking in this thing, we're going to do this. So they let us play Stonehill, right, who just went D1, and we packed that place out, and they supported it. And so, that kind of stuff doesn't happen if you don't have a president like President Nemec, who is supporting and cares about women's sports. And, yeah, huge reason we're here, too.
Yeah, you talk about that. If other universities, would they want a men's game? There are definitely, you face those struggles of people preferring to watch a men's game over a women's game, but you look at the women's game in the last couple of years has grown immensely. In your guys' career, what's taken you to just keep coaching women's and not switch into the men's game, and what has taken you guys to the women's game to start out?
For me, I've been fortunate that during my time, like entering college and to this point, it was on the rise and you could feel it. I still remember the first women's college basketball game I ever went to. It was the Conference USA Championship. It was at UNC Charlotte. It was Louisville versus TCU when those both were still in the Conference USA. And we went with my high school basketball team, both the men and the women's team. And there was a player for TCU named Sandora Irvin. And I just remember watching the game. And 2 minutes in, I'm like, who is that? That is the best basketball player I've ever seen in my life, right? And I've played with guys who have played D1. I played with guys. One of my teammates in high school played in the NBA. I'm like, who's that? That's amazing. Oh, my gosh. And from that moment, I was like, yeah, women's basketball, we need to be watching this, right? And so I was fortunate that, I went to Gardner-Webb University and was a practice player for our women's team. And we had girls on our team that were just straight cooking people, right? And they went to the NCAA tournament. And so for me, it was like I saw this thing, and it was never really a thought. And I'm interested to hear Coach Erik's response, because obviously you've been in the game longer and you've seen it, way before this kind of thing happened. But for me, I feel like I got on right as the wave started coming up. And I was, again, I like sports. I like good athletic events of all kind. And I just watched and went, yeah, this is good. I didn't go, well, it's good for women's basketball. No, it's good. I have eyes and I can watch, and yeah, this is really good. So I was fortunate, I think, that the timing worked out perfectly for me.
So Logan, you used a term balance a few minutes ago between academics and athletics. And, one of the things we talk about is that it's not necessarily a balance where one has to go up for the other to go down, right? It's that, hey, when you get better at academics, you get better at basketball. When you get better at practicing and training and stuff like that, you get better in your academics. I think it's the same thing with gender equity in sports, right? Is that us Fairfield having a really good women's basketball program helps the whole university. It makes the men's program better. We root for the men every single day. The better the men do, the better we, right? It's not an either or, right? And I don't think people have always felt like that, right? And so again, being at a place that gets that is like, yes, please, go pack the place for a women's game. We brought in Michigan. Blake does scheduling, on that first weekend, whatever, and then the men did it and they packed the place, right? We all lift each other up, right? So. Look, the story for women's athletics, for me, I got in the game. So I graduated from college in '94, and UConn was about to go on there. Rebecca Lobo, undefeated season in '95 and stuff like that. And that was my first year in women's basketball. And back then, like you had to work to find women's basketball in the media, right? Like if you weren't like going and seeking it out, so people didn't know. So I remember my first year in women's basketball, it was eye-opening to me because I knew that I played Division III basketball at UC San Diego. I knew our women's team, whatever. And look, I'm married to a great athlete. My wife played, she was the National Player of the Year in women's volleyball at Ohio State, played on the USA team, was an alternate for the Olympics. So look, I've always cared about women's athletics. But women's basketball, like for me, started in 1995 when I got into it, and I was a practice guy as well. So Blake and I both got into the game as male practice players. And I know you mentioned that you've got a buddy who's one of our practice guys.
Shout out to Drew.
Drew, he's awesome. He's Blake's latest recruit. So Blake's Drew. In charge of kind of recruiting and organizing our practice guys. So yeah, I mean, my first year of grad school, I walk in to be honest with you, this is how I got into coaching. So I walk into the men's coach's office, Al Skinner at the time. He had gone to college with one of my former associate ADs. I dropped his name. I made a resume. Hey, here camps I've worked at 23 years old, whatever. And he kind of blew me off. So I walked over to the women's office and said the same thing. I'm like, look, I want to coach. You don't have to pay me a dime. And she said, well, do you want to practice every day? I was like, yeah. That's all I've ever done is play basketball every day of my life, right? Of course I do. So she goes, great. You can come to any coaching meeting you want. I'm happy to help you, learn to be a coach. Here's some practice gear and some shoes. See you at practice. And so I was a volunteer assistant that first year and everything. And so, your question about watching the women's game grow and stuff, I think there has been a sense of purpose for me, certainly being in the game and helping these women that, as Blake said, our women now don't know how tough it was, even 10, 20, years ago, whatever, to be able to have opportunities, practice times, gear, all those kinds of things, right? And so again, the world's come a long way. We're still fighting battles, but it's awesome to see, where like the t-shirts, everybody watches women's sports.
I just want to highlight what you said in the beginning there about the women's team playing well and the men's team playing well and bringing up the university. That is just so true. And you look at you guys last year being ranked, and earlier this year, Katie Lamb rose on overtime when she had a 30 ball. Like, it's just brings a big name to Fairfield, and people through this women's basketball team are getting to know Fairfield, and we're making the NCAA tournament, and it really does. When you guys play well, the university does better. The men's team plays well, you guys play well. It's so true, and I just wanted to make sure that point got brought home there.
I'm gonna bring that point home a little bit more. Corey Eunice, Vice President for Enrollment Management here at Fairfield, released a Class of 29 early action profile, I think it was a couple months ago. And just to highlight on the attention, there were 15,040 early action applicants. 4,290 of those got in here. I mean, 15,000 people just in that phase. There are, a number of people that are going to be in their later phases. So to bring that attention to this university, and you guys played a huge role, being ranked last year and really driving home that message of, okay, D1 athletics, legit school, but also academics is priority at the same time. So you guys make up a great point, and I kind of want to switch gears to more of an individual message. So I'll start with you, Blake. When it's all said and done, when you're done coaching, what is your message, and what do you want people to remember you for?
Wow.
Yeah, we're getting deep.
Wow, I love that. I think for me, I look back at my time as an athlete, and I still think and talk about the best coach I ever had in my life, which was my high school soccer coach, Fernando Sosa, who I got to see actually at our Wake Forest game. So him and his wife came. I had about 35, 40 people that came down because I went to high school and college.
Blake needed all of our comp tickets.
I did. I was like, if you're not using your tickets, please come to me. But Coach Sosa made me certainly a better athlete, but he made me feel, and I've said this before, but like everyone who played for this guy, and he coached both our men and women's team, everyone who ever played for him felt like they were the most important person that he ever coached. So he made every single kid. He ended up coaching hundreds of kids, and we all felt like it was me. I was the most important player to him. And he made us all feel that way and empowered me. And he texts me. He watches all our games. I'll still call him if I'm in a funk or like, Coach, I can't get through to this kid. Like, what do you think? Like, what? And he just makes me want to be a better human and make these young people, step into who they are as a person. And so for me, if I can make even a tiny percentage of the people I coach feel that same way, I'll feel like I did a pretty good job. So making these people feel empowered, make them feel loved, and supported. Certainly, walk away here. We talk about with recruits all the, we're trying to get out of here. 4 years, 4 rings. Like, that's the goal. And hopefully we can do that, but way more important and way more long lasting is how we make them feel. And so I hope that I told Coach Sosa this after the Wake game. I told him, I said, if I finish my career 1% of the impact you've made, I've had a really successful career. And that's how I feel.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, look, I'm the son of educators. My mom was a high school teacher. My dad was a college professor. And so, like, I've always thought, had I not had this opportunity at the University of Rhode Island to get into Division I athletics, stuff like that, I was going to be a high school math teacher and a basketball coach and stuff like that, right? So I think of us as teachers. And so, again, I really gain a lot of satisfaction from the lessons that our players learn from us about life in everything that they do. And when we hear them coach kids at camp and use the same things that we told them, certainly about the game, like hustle and play defense and all these things, but even just about high-fiving each other and supporting each other, picking up the cups off the bench after the game and, those kinds of things. So, for me, I really value the lessons that these guys take through life. And if we can help them make their lives better, and they're thinking about some of the things that, what was the quote? Coach Carly has all kinds of quotes that are on our locker room wall. This one isn't even one of them, but with Janelle Brown, who's been hurt this year, right? So she was Player of the Year in the conference last year, tore her ACL, and she is incredibly passionate, right, and just intense young person, right? So we've had to talk to Nellie a lot about, like, hey, let's try to be positive and productive, right? Yeah, there's a time to get on somebody or whatever, right? And so she was yelling at Ray, right? It was Ray about not fouling and stuff like that, whatever. And and so instead of, yes, you gotta stop fouling or whatever, she goes, Ray, discipline is the highest form of self-love. That kind of thing for us, right? Like for Nellie to remember that, right? B, for her to actually give that advice to someone else. Like, to me, that's the stuff, right? Is that these women are becoming great adults, great parts of the world. And if we had some small part in being able to, help them live great lives and make the world a better place, win-win.
Right on.
That's awesome messages from you guys. And I know we're coming up to an end here, but we got a couple quick hitters for you guys.
I added some of my own. I knew this was coming.
All right.
We'll go one-on-one.
I love it. I'll go first. Okay. You guys have any pregame rituals?
So, okay, this is dumb. I'm not a superstitious person by nature. Okay, but last year, before our first home game, it was a weeknight, 7 o'clock home game, I was just really hungry on the way in, right? So I stopped by Wendy's and got a cheeseburger. Like just literally, like just real quick. I was driving by a Simple Grape. So we win. So next time we have a home game during the weekday, I'm like, last time we won, had a cheeseburger. Flash forward now to 2 years later, okay? Every home game we have had on a weekday, I have gone and gotten a cheeseburger from a different restaurant.
Oh, different.
Different.
Okay.
So this has evolved. So every single game, I have gotten a cheeseburger from somewhere different. And we have won every single home weekday game except Richmond. And guess what? I didn't get a cheeseburger.
Oh, that is crazy.
I didn't get a cheeseburger. And I've stopped eating red meat in my life.
But that's the only exception.
But so tomorrow, guess what? I'm eating a cheeseburger.
You're getting a cheeseburger.
I'm definitely getting a cheeseburger. But literally, I have done it for X amount of times, and we are 22-1. And the one time I didn't, we lost. So that one's on me. Won't happen again.
My latest one, and I've had lots over my, right, as you can tell, I got a lot more gray hair than all you guys.
25, 30, man. I can't see it.
I give Coach Carly a Breath Savers mint, or at least offer it before each game.
Okay.
Interesting. Favorite thing to do on an off day? I'll start with you, Coach Erik, this time.
Well, unfortunately, on our off days, we're not off. We're catching up on film. I live by the beach, and something you may not know about me is I jump in the water every day. So yes, at this time of year, the water is 35, and I do a cold plunge during the summer. It's awesome. I'm out there on my paddleboard, watching sunsets and sunrises and stuff like that. So, definitely going to jump in the water every day. And on Sundays, I get to play, because Sundays are off day during the season.
Men's league?
Yes, exactly. I've infiltrated an old guy's basketball. I'm a junkie. I still got a couple miles left on the knees and ankles or whatever. So I'm going to try to play out the string as long as I can.
Love that.
Yeah, I'm a sicko. I will sit there with the ESPN app up on my phone, and there's usually tons of games on Sundays, and I will just find games that are close in the fourth quarter and turn them on. And so I have watched so much, just whack basketball, and I mean both the conference and WACK, like terrible basketball, and I just get sucked in, and I come in the office the next day and be like, guys, did you see the triple overtime game in the Big South like yesterday? So I'm an absolute sicko.
Blake is also the vortex of special situations, and this is part of where he gets. I saw this play in the SWAC, semi-final, whatever, or like the 9th place game or whatever, Yes. So yeah, he's always watching something.
It's gross.
That is awesome. Favorite athlete of all time?
That was my question, but go.
Oh God, go.
Yeah, I grew up a Magic Johnson guy. I was young. My last name's Johnson. His Olympic jersey was my same jersey number from high school, et cetera, et cetera. And I just loved the passion, the smile, just the flair, that kind of stuff. That got me loving basketball in the 70s when I was a kid.
I'm from Baltimore originally, big Orioles guy. So I grew up idolizing Cal Ripken Jr. So that was my guy there. And currently, I'll do a women's basketball, bring back around Emma Meesman, my favorite women's basketball player right now.
Nice.
Best time to play a game. Like, we might know this answer, but maybe it'll be different.
No, see, I don't want to eat red meat anymore, so I'm trapped into this thing. So I hate weekday home games. I hopefully only play in the night. But no, 2 p.m. on a Saturday. Perfect.
Amen.
You as well, Coach Erik?
You bet. Yeah, we don't have to get up crazy early, home for dinner.
Yes.
We love the MAC because, honestly, the games are close enough. Even if we're on the road, we're still often home for dinner. So it's the best.
Brendan, one more from you.
All right, let's see. Top song on your guys' playlist right now.
So the playlist thing is an issue for me because, honestly, like my wife asked me the other day, she goes, do you know any music from this century? And my answer was yes, some of it, right? So I do not know the lyrics. So the other day, Issa asked me, she goes, Coach EJ, I'll do a playlist for you, name an artist or whatever. And I said the Eagles. And she didn't know what that was or whatever. And so like we were rocking out. I got a bunch of classic rock. But my number one would probably be James Taylor, You've Got a Friend.
Oh, what a
Love
song.
that.
What a song.
Nice. I'm a big Sturgill Simpson is my favorite artist right now. I saw him in concert in New York a couple months ago, which was great. But my guilty pleasure, and the team has slowly found this, that Lauren Beach got out of me, I love Chapel Roan. Like
really,
I love her. Like so.
When you looked at your phone, I was like, "There's not Chapel Roan is not an
No.
option on this
Like
list.
the Spotify top list, like Sturgill was one, Chapel Roan was right there.
Wow.
So I know a little bit of a surprise. So any of them, Hot to Go, Phenomena. It's my guilty pleasure. So if you ever hear me, driving behind Mahoney to park and you hear that blaring, it's probably me.
Oh, Blake's here.
I love it.
Coach Erik, I gotta ask, in the modern music, is it because you listen to so much of the girls' music in practice, or is it just like your choice?
No. So I try to, know the songs and everything that they're, and I recognize. So like when he says Chapel Roan, like I know who that is, and I could recognize a couple songs or whatever. But generally, Blake has to tell me about music after 2000. And basically, honestly, I'm lazy and I stopped paying attention, man. I was a top 40s kid, or whatever. I grew up in the 80s and all this kind of stuff. And somewhere around college, I stopped trying. I got into basketball and doing other things and married and having kids and all this kind of stuff. So I just don't have the brain capacity for new music. So I just, it's a comfort thing. Getting old, it is what it is.
So how did you feel about that halftime show on Sunday?
So my wife and I were joking because our daughter, so I got a daughter just graduated from college, another one who's in college right now, and they were texting about like, oh my God, it was awesome. I loved all this, whatever. And one of us saw like a post that said something about people loved the halftime show. The only bad part was to try to explain it to their parents. And we were like, yep. That's you. I go, that's us. I go, somebody's going to have to explain all this stuff to us.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I got one big question for you. Coach Erik, I'm going to start with you this time. Elevator pitch for Fairfield Faithful for the rest of the season.
I think we're a fun team to watch. I think we play a great style. We got depth. We shoot the ball. We run the floor. We defend intense or whatever. So to be honest with you, our kids are they're great with the fans and everything. So come out, watch a game. This group is fun. Ton of energy. And I think, like I said, if you're a basketball person, you'll love the hoops.
Yep.
Yep.
Watch us once. I think you'll like us. Team successful. We got what we're approaching the second longest MAC winning streak of all time for either gender. So we win. We play the game the right way. We play a fun style. Easy group to get behind, and an unbelievable facility in Mahoney.
Brendan?
Thank you so much, guys. This was a pleasure to get to speak with you, hear your thoughts. It was an awesome time.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we might have to have all 6 of you guys come into the studio at one time. We might have to figure out how to make that happen. But again, if you haven't seen this team play, come watch them play. A number of games left, just a handful, unfortunately. But then we got playoff time in the MAC tournament starting on March 10th. It's been a pleasure, Logan Rundy, WVOF Assistant Sports Director, the amazing, talented, funny Brendan Boudelier at the end of the table, the amazing Coach Erik Johnson, and of course, not to be remiss, Coach Blake DuDonis. Man, it's an absolute pleasure. If you haven't checked out any of our WVOF Sports Stacks in the Studio episodes or the previous 10, go check that out at WVOF Sports on YouTube.com. Check our Twitter page for in-game updates on most Fairfield athletics games. It's been an absolute pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe and go Stags.